Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7 p.m. Please rise for the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll call to order this meeting of the Town Council, and the first item on our agenda is announcements. I would be remiss in not saying that today, with the death of Queen Elizabeth, we have seen an absolutely staunch defender of democracy for 70 years that goes all the way from Truman to Biden, goes all the way from Churchill to a brand new prime minister. What a remarkable woman, and for those of us who treasure democracy, that's it doesn't get better than that.
I believe it was the longest reigning monarch in British history.
Yeah, yeah. Locally, on Saturday, which would be the day after tomorrow, the Little Compton Community Center is celebrating its 25th anniversary. They have a celebration that's going to be proceeding that day. The next day, Sunday, is the date of the community dinner, followed by the fireworks. And although you need to have already said you're going to go to the community dinner to assure you have a seat at the table, I'll bet you if you bring your food, there'll be a spot for you. So I would just encourage those who have not yet made that decision to do so. Any other announcements that need to be made? Next item of business is approval of the minutes of August 25th.
Motion to approve the town council minutes of August 25th, 2022 as written, unless anybody has any comments.
Second.
Discussion on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next is the department head reports. We have 8 reports: the clerk, the police chief, the building official, the fire chief, the assessor, the administrator, the finance director, and the public works director.
Motion to place all 8 department heads on file unless anybody wants to pull one for discussion.
I'll second.
Motion is made and seconded. I believe the administrator had a comment that he would like to make.
Yes, I do, Mr. President. Just briefly, I'd like to, the town hall restoration, I know much that we've been waiting for. We have a contractor on board. We met yesterday to work through the details for the starting date, which will be very soon. We just need to sign off on the contract, and soon we'll see a contractor begin to work here in the town hall for the renovations, the exterior as well as the interior. We'll see what this will look like once it gets through. The other one is, let's see, most recent is the paving for DOT. Good news is that we actually had engineers here at the Commons today, and they were surveying the area so that they can expedite the process for the paving, and not just of the Commons area, but as well as south of the Commons. And I believe there's three streets altogether. I can't recall all of them.
Simmons as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's good news. They have moved the projects along at their level, and they certainly will be. The purpose of the engineers today was for them to come up with 30% engineering so that they could forward that to the next step. So we are seeing some movement in that as well.
Thank you.
Would you also just briefly comment on the MRP, Municipal Resilient Project?
I'm sorry, which one was it again?
Municipal
Municipal resiliency? Yes. We have 3 projects that we had been approved for, which was Stoneway, South Shore Beach, and John Dyer Road.
Right.
In addition to that, the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank has reached out to us, and they propose to add one more project and generate the funding for that as well, and that's Taylor's Lane. We actually had a brief meeting today, and they need additional information, so we can loop back on that.
I'm sorry, I missed that meeting. Is there a timeline for those?
For the first three, yes, December 31st of this year, and the other one is December 31st of next year, 2023.
You also touch on the broadband.
Broadband, we have been working with what's called Newport Connector. They've been working as a regional, actually. We work with them as a regional group. There's 9 communities that are involved in that, and we've been discussing as to what is the best approach for us to bring broadband into our communities and not expend funds unnecessarily for, what do you call it, for, not advisors, I can't think of the term right now, consultants. So in order to avoid that, but we are continuing the discussion and look forward to see something happen very soon.
And the next meeting is when?
The next meeting, I believe it's coming up. I saw it I'm not sure right now. I did see today coming through on my screen, but I did not open that.
If you could share that with me, I'd like to attend that.
Definitely.
That meeting.
Will do.
People the public would like to know, it's about getting connectivity down here. We're the worst in the state with connectivity. So it's really an important thing that's going on right now. They're figuring out what towns need the most support. So we need to be pretty vocal with that and let them know we need a lot of support here. Thanks.
To that point, I've been making sure that we keep our IT person as well as the school IT director involved. They've attended a couple meetings as well as the president. We've attended some meetings in Newport to be aware of and to have a seat at the table.
And just lastly, the senior van, you want to touch on that?
Yes, we've acquired a senior van. It's being some touch-ups, some repairs and some more to work, and we should have within the next 2-3 weeks max.
Looks like the cost of that van will be within the resources of what we set aside as a result of the sale of our van. So I'm encouraged that we can have something back online that fits with what we believe we need as we've listened to those who ride it to be able to tell us what it is that was desired.
I'd like to thank Sal Mariosi for spearheading that, by the way.
Yeah, that was
Very true.
excellent work. All right, then that is the motion to place all of these on file. Are you ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next item of business is old business, and it is to receive a recommended response on a notice received from Rhode Island Environmental Management Freshwater Wetlands Program concerning the draft freshwater wetlands general permit. I don't see any of the 4 members of the committee. That was Chairman Mike Steers of the Planning Board, Don McNaughton of the Conservation Commission, Peter Medeiros, the building official, and Allison Ring. Those 4 were to provide a recommended response to us on that freshwater wetlands general permit. So I will ask the administrator to solicit from them the input that we need to make so that we can respond in as necessary. It is very possible that our original submittals were satisfactory and they deemed there to be no further input that we needed to make, but I don't know that for a fact. The next item of business is a request from the Recreation Committee for the council to seek a variance for the size of a sign the Recreation Committee, wishes to install in the field in the common. We have in your packet an image of that sign. And what you don't have is the request for a variance.
Well, I mean, the sign looks all right to me. It's something that we put a lot of money into the recreation complex down there, and I think people should know the names of these fields that we put down there. And so I think we should seek the variance from the zoning board if that's what the route we have to take.
It's also way out of the way. It's not near the
Yeah.
road to distract drivers or anything like that, so I'll agree with that.
Let me offer you my perspective on it. I believe, sitting as the council responsible for the ordinances of the town, for us to seek a variance from those ordinances, I'm not in favor of the town council going to a board that it appoints and asking it to vary from the law that we've put in place. That's my sense.
I can concur with that, but I just don't want to set any precedent for any other councils going forward, for any kind of response that this may go forward. My feeling is with the town council, we can improve this. It's not like we're trying to approve a new recreation field without input from the town. It's a sign to signify everything that's been down there at that complex. So, what's the solicitor's opinion on this?
Well, it's come up before, naturally, and that's when we built the police fire complex, which is an extraordinary effort. So, yeah, the town council went before the zoning board, maybe I went before the zoning board, we appointed special counsel. Of course, it was granted. But this is a little different. This is a pre-existing situation we have to commit to. Is that correct? I'm not familiar with
What do you mean pre-existing? You mean there's a sign there already? Is that what you mean?
What's that?
Pre-existing, what do you mean?
I'm not exactly sure what relief you're asking for. Who's
So they're asking for a sign that's bigger than the ordinance. I think it's 12 square feet, and the recreation committee has asked for 20 square feet. As you can see here, 5 by 4.
No, what he's saying is the ball field and all that stuff already exists. It's not like the public safety complex where you're building a brand new building and putting a brand new lot and everything like that. But is your point, sir, that the recreation committee itself should seek the variance, or you think we should just use our authority and grant it?
No, my point is that we, as the council, have said throughout the town, 12 square feet is the maximum size of a board. For us to seek the variance is inappropriate, I believe. That's just my opinion. I mean, we are 5, and if a majority of you think that we should, I obviously will yield to that. My concern is we are responsible for the ordinances of the town. It is we who said it's 12 square feet. Now we're appealing to vary from that. I see that as being unusual, but I'm willing to be convinced otherwise.
I understand that, but I don't think the recreation committee can go to the zoning board. That would even be more, to what you're saying. That's why they're appealing to us. They can't jump the council and go to the zoning board.
I acknowledge that they could seek our endorsement of what they're seeking to do, in which case I would not vote in favor of that, only because we have in our ordinances an ordinance that doesn't have any room for difference. So we'd have people who'd say, but we changed the size of our church sign in order to accommodate the fact that the town said this. Again, just.
I understand that completely, your logic to that.
We did that to A1 Pizza too.
What would the relief be for the recreation committee if they adamant about their 20 square foot sign? Where would they go?
I went down and measured the signs that are down there, and the Dundry signs are 10 square feet each, and they're divided in the center such that they have a sign and a sign. That's one way that we could do it. This image is interesting. I don't know if it can be shrunk and still be visible and still be useful, but it is my position that we ought to try to accommodate that. If we want to put it in 2 signs with a place in between it, at least we're then accommodating our own ordinance. I see us as talking out of both sides of our mouths.
Would we hear from the rec committee chairman?
Certainly. Yes, sir.
Just quickly, the sign you just mentioned that has 2 signs, the one going down to the conservation property.
Right.
Okay. It's my understanding that was 1 sign when I talked to the building commissioner. So therefore, that is over the square footage of the town. On the other hand, if you look at that, that is a feasible sign. If that's acceptable. But we were trying to do is on the front simply say, you know, welcome to the recreation area, list the 4 parks of the field, and on the back, have a history of the people that were involved with that. And the person that was gonna do the sign thought it would be too small to try to fit it on, kind of put it on the same one that was on Peckham Road. Because once you get the sign up, then you can do the hieroglyphics on the back and put it in. On the other hand, you know, if it's acceptable that we could do 2 signs like that, the same size, and put it up, and still get all the information on it, maybe that's the way to go. I was also under the understanding, because the town owned the property, we had to get your permission to go to ask for the variance. So that's why it's there.
I certainly grant that. I'm not suggesting that, no, you shouldn't have come to the town council. I'm expressing the attitude that says, all right, we've been given this request. We are gonna go before the zoning board and seek a variance from an ordinance that we invoked, is my only distress with it. And I'm willing to be in the minority, thinking it just seems to me that if we are responsible to the citizens of the town to be the ones who define the ordinances of the town, for us to seek a variance from that for the sake of, we'd like to have it bigger, it seems inconsistent, in my opinion. But that's why we have 5 of us.
Maybe,
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this, because Bill Moore was very concerned about signs, you know, and he was on top of it all the time, because in fact, the builders got bigger and bigger and bigger signs, so the neighbors next to the builders,
Yeah.
you know, started to suffer. So I agree that perhaps, although you could, the town is bound by the zoning code, caution about that. So then I think you should work within the zoning code. Dave suggested two separate signs that say this, give the information, and I think Peter would probably go along with that. If you call me, I'd tell
I
him.
understand that that sign is considered to be 2 separate signs. And there's the opinion of, well, other people I talk to, no, it's not, because it's connected in the middle. I just want to get it done. You know, you guys have done a good job on the recreation field. This has been proposed over 5 years now. How we get the design done and get the information out is just so important, I think, to finish that project off and make it visible. If you look on the diagram that we're giving you too, it's gonna be such, no matter what side of the parking lot you enter into, it'll be on an angle, so you see the sign right away, it'll be visible right away. And that's why, you know, again, maybe it just me, I kinda like the looks of the one on Peckham Road, and I said, okay, then talking about that, maybe there may be enough when we put the information out. If it's viable that we can make a sign similar to the one that's right there, somehow figure out with the design, I'd be all for that. If that's considered to be 2 signs, I'd have to go back and ask the building official again on that.
Dave, does the building official say it was 1 sign? Is that what you're intimating?
To be honest with you, the fact that I've talked to so many people, I'm not so sure who told me. And I don't want to put anybody on the spot. If you measure it, if you measure the signs with the post, and the post in the middle, that's 27 square feet, something like that. Okay, that's a lot of stuff. That would even be bigger than what we proposed to put up in front, you know. Again, you don't want it to be too obtrusive. You want it to be seen and whatever. So again, I mean,
So-
something to go back and look at.
So in totality, that the Conservancy Trust sign is 7 feet larger square feet than what you're proposing? Whether you want to say it's 1 sign or 2, whether it's something running in between it. So you've got a smaller sign here than what you have existing now.
But I kind of agree with Mr. Bush that we're gonna, you know, if it's gonna put the town council in a situation too. I just want to get some kind of sign up that's recognizable to the town, people that come in, okay. And on the back, see, oh, I said, back, now might be the side, have a history of those people that were involved in that, like, you know, Mr. Hayes, 40 years, make sure recreation went on where the soccer field was.
So you,
Jimmy Waddell worked on those tennis courts for years, and they were falling apart, and nobody else worked on them. So, you know, that's just nice to have that on the back, or somewhere down there where it's visible, so that, you know, people that come in town, they don't know that.
so,
Preserve that history.
I've got a question. Do we know, is this field, are they in the business zone or the residential zone?
They're in the business zone.
because the ordinances allow for, unlike in the residential zone where it doesn't allow for, the variance. I mean, it's in our zoning ordinances to allow for dimensional variances to exceed the 12-foot limit. So I think that, it's in the ordinance, we're operating within the ordinances, so I think we should allow them to go before the zoning board of review. And
They're asking us to go before the zoning board, but yes.
No,
We're the owners.
okay, well, I think it's within our right, within the ordinance to do it, because it's in the business zone, so.
Okay.
so we would ask the solicitor to go in front of the
Yes.
zoning board as our
Yes,
representative.
we'd have the alternate solicitor sitting with them.
So that's gonna be a cost.
So, we do, Andrew makes a good point. Bob makes the other point, which is if these are the laws that we adopted, then why don't we just fit within the laws?
If I could just say one last thing, and you've got a sign that's existing out there that's 27 square feet. You've got one here that's 20. Why don't you do one that's 27 square feet, just like what's existing? To me, that would just be accepted practice. To me, there's one there already.
Which sign are you speaking of? That's 27 square.
The Nature Conservancy sign.
Oh, and the wood, okay.
But you're not replacing that sign, it's a new.
No, this is a new sign, and from what I understand, including the post is 20 square feet.
They're 48 by 30 inches, and so I calculated.
So in totality, this is 20 square feet. In totality, what's existing is 27 square feet. This is smaller than what's existing. So I suggest you add your 7 square feet and do exactly what's already there. It's already accepted practice there, why change it?
Two wrongs don't make a right. You can't use that argument.
Well, there's 2 signs.
There's a guy speeding ahead of you and you're following, the cop pulls you over.
Well, no, they're saying there's
It's
2
not your
signs.
fault. It doesn't matter. If the other sign is too big, it's too big. All right, we'll agree that it's too big, or it's 2 signs. But you can't use that as justification for this.
Each of those metal panels is 4 feet by 2.5 feet.
Right.
So they're 10 square feet each. In sum, they're 20 square feet. To your point, Counselor, if you count all the wood around the outside, which this drawing does not, for this sign, it may be 27 square feet, I don't know.
This is 5'7" by 4'7" at least.
Okay.
I'm assuming it's a 4x4 post.
I must say that I did not anticipate this being, I simply wanted to point out my position on this, is that I think we are operating in a manner that is not consistent with our role as town council. I acknowledge, Counselor, that we could seek a variance on the basis of the fact that it's in the business zone, and I'm fine if that's what the council wishes to do. So I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move to approve it. What's the ordinance number? Do you got that right there, Andrew?
14-7.
Under 14-7 in a business zone sign, that it can be up to, the sign itself can be up to 20 square feet.
Second.
I'm assuming you mean that you're going to seek
Seek a variance,
a variance for that?
yeah, up to 20 square feet.
So the motion is before us, made and seconded to that the council will seek a variance from the zoning board to allow the installation of a 20 square foot sign for the recreation.
Under that ordinance that Andrew was quoting.
Under the specification in the zoning ordinance, which allows such an appeal to be made. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Yeah, aye?
I'm in favor.
Okay.
So that
Who
motion
would
passes
put that
5-0.
forth, the solicitor?
We'll work with the recreation committee, they'll fill out the application. And I'll either be the board's lawyer or probably the board's lawyer, I think that's right.
Yeah.
And I'll have Gerard or someone put it through.
Okay.
The next item of business is to consider a proposal received, that the Recreation Committee received for repairs to town tennis courts. It's been tabled to this meeting.
David Craig, would you like to speak on this one also?
I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but we're trying to repair all the further things to get done down there later. That's why that proposal went in, to get those done.
Motion to approve this proposal for $5,900 to fill the cracks of the tennis court, but I want to make one comment after that motion. On discussion.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Go ahead.
I was down there yesterday. Some of the cracks are pretty extensive. They're half an inch wide, maybe some of them are 3/4 inch wide, and they have vegetation growing up through the cracks and the dirt there. So what this says, clean out existing cracks with blowers. Blowers aren't going to move that grass, so they may have to, what we call in the welding industry is your back gouge, which is, I'm sure they have a tool to go into cracks. They can take that vegetation out of there. And if some are only, you know, the dirt is up as high as what the playing surface is, they're gonna have to go down a little bit because this, you know, you wanna fill the cracks, because if you just put it on top, the water's still gonna go down there. Once it freezes, it's gonna pull that seal off. So if somebody can go down there and just make sure the vegetation is taken out of there, because that vegetation will grow right up through this filler. So that's the only concern I had, just to make sure that they're filled correctly and that they're dug out deep enough so that the seal can go into the crack and not just lay on the surface.
I would only have the comment that I think we've all agreed that there's something more deeply wrong with the tennis courts than this repair will solve. So this is a patch that will be done, and then we will deal with the fact that the tennis courts appear to be remaining on a floating surface rather than a solid surface, unlike the basketball court, which was excavated down to bedrock. Okay.
If somebody can let me know when that company comes into town to do that, I'd be happy to go down there and see what they're doing, maybe make a comment or two. Of course, they generally don't like that, but since we're paying, I don't mind doing it.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thanks for bringing this forward, and I hope we can get another period of service out of the courts. The next item of business is a request by Councilor McHugh that we place on the agenda an update on the Mayflower Wind Project. Before we get to that, or before we get into the details of that, I have two concerns. One, we have a communication which was received after the fact, after the publishing of the agenda, but not by the whole council, only by Councilors McHugh and myself. So we have that concern. I also would point out that this is a matter we have covered in executive session, so I'm anxious to be sure we don't transgress the boundaries of where we were with the executive session. And I accept the fact that you want to talk about it, but I'd like to be careful. So I ask the solicitor just to put any constraints that you see important.
So yes, we did have an executive session 2 weeks ago, I guess. At that point, much was discussed, and I'll leave it at that. Since then, there have been, a number of significant developments that are outside the scope of that conversation that I'm happy to share at any time if the council wants to know that.
I'm happy to acquiesce my update if you want to update us more than that.
Certainly. The town has sought to intervene, and outside counsel was engaged to do that. As of late this afternoon, the Mayflower developers have filed.
Excuse me, Mr. Holman, could you speak up, because I can.
Certainly, I'm sorry about that. Do I have the cell phone?
You can pull that forward.
No, thank you. So, as of late this afternoon, the Mayflower developers have filed an additional piece of information to the board in Providence in regards to the siting. And I believe our outside counsel will probably file such a document today or tomorrow. Probably in late September, the board, of which we're trying to intervene before, will issue a decision whether or not Little Compton can participate as an intervener. And if so, will that be a limited intervener, which I think, if it's granted, which I hope it will be, that the town's right to intervene is granted, it may be limited. The reason for that is the board doesn't want to hear duplicitous or duplicate arguments all the time. And I understand that. Little Compton is, of course, a stakeholder in this matter. I'm not so sure that Little Compton's interests are fully protected by some of the other towns, Portsmouth and Middletown in particular. So, most important, we hope to have an update probably around September 29th. I spoke extensively with Chris Capizzi, who is the developer's attorney. I knew him for many years when he was a practicing attorney, in particular with the Department of Attorney General. He's a good lawyer, a good guy to do business with. One of the things that the town will look to me for in this division of labor is to protect the town's financial interest. Right now, you might say, well, what are they? Well, right now, we're paying legal fees, so that costs some money. That's a financial interest that's been impacted by the town. But let's think about something a little bit more to the point, which is, wouldn't we like to know if this cable will damage Little Compton? So Gary's done a lot of research. I've done some research. I have experts that I've used in other cases, but who's going to pay for that? So one of the things that the town might want to do as we go through our meetings with Mayflower is to say, why don't you pay us X dollars so we can engage experts? You brought this to our doors. Why do we now have to reach into our pockets to see, is this going to hurt us? That will not be laughed out of the room, but it will be not well received. On the other hand, the way that I think the town's been very receptive to anybody that has anything to say to the town, they want to come down and make a couple of presentations. One probably in an executive session, because I'm claiming at least some limited damages to the council. And then, of course, I think all the townspeople should be at a presentation by Mayflower also. They have been quite, I guess, through their public statements, they want to come down and see the town, and that's fair for the town to be as best educated as possible. I was on the Board of Trustees at the University of Rhode Island, and we have a particularly strong oceanography program. Mayflower has been working with them quite a bit, so that's good news for us. I didn't recognize this, but in some towns, the fire chiefs get involved. Seems to make sense. They will provide us, the developer will provide us with a cable route and a map. It is on their website, they claim. I didn't see it, but, so, and lastly, Gary would want to know this. There's a guy named Joel Southall, who is the fisherman's liaison who is working with Mayflower. And he might be someone, Gary, because I know you're well connected within that community, that you might reach out to and make the introduction. I'll certainly do the same from my angle. But, so that's my update on Mayflower. The intervention, granted in part or in whole, or denied, will take place in late September.
So, Counselor, I don't know how you know it's in late September, but I know for the record that if they deny us, it'll be over. We'll have no more rights. It'll be over. So I know you just referenced you speaking with the applicant's attorney for mitigation compensation.
Well, I was speaking to him because I hadn't talked to him about the project at all.
So I think that needs to be done quickly. Decision may happen in 4 days, might happen in 3 days, may happen in a week.
That's correct.
And if it's a no, we have no more, it's over. So I think that I want to stress upon you that you need to, and if you need to intervene with you, I don't know, we need to find out what compensation they're going to give us quickly.
Right.
Because this could be over very shortly.
So, so the intervention of the siting could be over very shortly. I agreed with that.
Yeah.
The compensation does not vanish.
Yeah, why doesn't it vanish? We will have no standing. We will not be an intervener. We'll be just like Tiverton.
Our interest will be, or our damages will be calculated by our experts, whatever they may be. For example, Gary might be able to show a lost catch. And that is a damage to our town. We might be able to show a loss of mooring fees. That's a damage to our town. So,
I don't think if we, from what I understand in my research, if we are not granted intervention, it's over. You're not gonna get any money, you're not gonna get any more consultation, you're not gonna be able to talk to the applicant's lawyer anymore.
so I had a completely different experience when I successfully represented a client against Block Island Power. So that's the experience that I had.
For the minutes, that's what I understand. That I think you need to talk to the applicant's attorney and get mitigation compensation numbers now, and not wait until there's a decision. That's my opinion.
And in order to get those numbers, we need to have an expert. Who's gonna pay for the expert?
Well, they should pay for an expert.
That's what
And
I'm asking.
I've already said that, and as you know.
And that's what I'm asking.
You know, I think that, okay. I just want that noted in the minutes.
Well, it's up to the outside lawyer that we hired to push on so that we can intervene, Marissa, to intervene.
What the siding board asked for after was the reasons why, and we worked on it in
Right.
that meeting. And
I gave
from
those to
right.
Marissa,
So my
Marissa
understanding
should-
is that that brief was done today. I think it was done today. So now we're on the clock. Now they're gonna decide whether we are gonna be interveners or not.
And before we go any farther, I think that's what we have to find, whether the interveners, and Marissa had I mean, I gave her a mountain of stuff when this originally came, and she kept mentioning the stuff that I'd given her, basis for any compensation, mitigation compensation that we thought we would deserve, and she was supposed to put that forward, my understanding was, at the executive session.
Right, and now we're gonna wait for the decision.
Well-
But in the meantime, there was discussion of our solicitor contacting the applicant's lawyer.
Yeah.
From what I understand, you've done that.
Right.
And I'm pressing him for a number before it's too late.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know whether we can get numbers before we're adjudged as an intervener.
Damage is damage, whether you're intervener or not. Damage is damage. Whether you intervener more gives you maybe a little bit of say on what's gonna happen, how it's gonna go, cable's gonna go in. Intervener doesn't open the door for litigation.
So this is about the siting of the.
Right. Intervention is about where the cable's going. It's not about if we're gonna incur damages or not.
I would disagree with that. I think once we're an intervener, we're open to go to as you saw, I think it's public document, 140 hours, right? To what her budget was.
No, I don't want to get into anything that's discussed in executive session or subsequently produced thereafter.
So that's the update. You're gonna still follow up on it with their
Yeah,
attorney?
we'll talk tomorrow. I had asked the developer's attorney if he could give me a copy of his document tonight. I know he had to go off to do something with his child, but he said he'd get it to me tonight. I've dealt with him for 15 years or so.
Do we need another session with our hired attorney to negotiate the conditions of her offer?
I would recommend it.
God, there's just more money we're spending on the town for another lawyer. I'm sorry, that drives me crazy.
I think it's important.
I think you gotta go the way we're going. I don't think we need to keep spending money on lawyers.
Well, I'm suggesting she's put forth a proposal. Do we need to look at that proposal and decide what we're gonna do with it?
My understanding is the siding board says no, there's no need for a proposal. It'll be over. We don't need that attorney anymore.
And that's the way I'm trying to
I don't,
obtain it in my mind, that if we're not an intervener, I don't want to give her any more money.
You won't.
Okay,
Once she's
so
already done
before we
her-
even discuss her supposed email that I haven't seen yet, But I hear it's quite substantial amount of funds. And before I'm gonna commit the town to any kind of funding,
But-
then,
What we discussed was phase one and phase two. That's,
Right.
that's gonna be executed. If we're denied intervention, there's no email to read. It'll be
Right.
over.
right, so,
May I interrupt? I'm uncomfortable for Marissa, she's not here.
Okay.
It's not on the agenda.
Okay.
And this was, to my surprise, put on the agenda, so it's an update. I believe that they'll have a
Okay.
decision in late December, perhaps Patrick's right, perhaps it'll be in 4 days, I don't know.
so before we make any more commitment with Marissa, I think we gotta see whether we're gonna be an intervener.
And I think that the solicitor should approach the applicant's lawyer for mitigation funds now. Or we can charge Marissa to do that. That's what I feel.
That's outside the scope of the update, but.
Thank you.
New business.
A request from Peg Bugara, who is with us in the audience, to discuss short-term rentals and how other cities and towns are approaching regulating. Please.
I think my voice is usually loud enough. Good evening, and thank you for hearing me. Many of you don't know, I'm a carpetbagger. I've only been here 50 years, so. We bought our land in 1971, and at that time, there was called the Plymouth Land Grant Acres, and it included Eastview Drive, Wild Cherry Drive, Pleasant View Drive, and Pondview Drive. There is substantial restrictions, which I loved, except for one, I couldn't have my horse. In the long run, that was good because I didn't want to muck the stall. So one of the things, number 7, that I'd like to read to you is that the premises shall be used for residential purposes only. Businesses shall be conducted only in an area deleted as commercial. Well, that brings me to short-term rentals. We have 3 properties on the road right now doing short-term rentals. There's a 4th that was doing short-term rentals. There's a possibility of a 5th coming in to do short-term rentals. Well, what's the problem with that? This is just one house rental, and if you'd like, please pass it around. Now, this is at the end of our road, short-term rental, $390 a night. We have another one, $365, which is this one. We have one at the end of the road that are actively renting. My quiet street is like a race car speedway. I'm tired. I'm tired of people backing up on our driveway, breaking up our driveway. I'm tired of people parking on the road so that we don't really have a 2-lane road to begin with. So now we're curving around cars. I'm tired of cars. Late at night, there are lights going on and off all the time. The afternoons, there are kids out. You don't know whether the cars are going to be respectful because we have a 15-mile-per-hour speed limit on the road. Actually, it says 15 miles per hour or no dust. And in all honesty, there's always dust because it's not a town road. I think I have proposed, you've got Newport, who put in short-term restrictions. Middletown has short-term restrictions. Tiverton is doing short-term restrictions. why can't we control some of this? I'm not a bed and breakfast. I didn't buy to be near a bed and breakfast. So if you want to be a bed and breakfast, or you want to, rent out short-term, I'm not complaining long-term, you want to rent it out for a year, terrific. But every weekend, there's a new turnaround, new group of people coming down. They don't necessarily have the respect for the road or for the town that we have. I treasure this place. I don't want to be anywhere else. This is my home. This is where I raise my children. This is where I want to be permanently. And I think the disrespect that many of these renters have for our town, my property, as far as the road being, and the dangers that we have to face every day, because we don't know who's coming, who's going to be respectful. We've had renters coming by and swearing at residents. I don't want that. Who can I call? Can't call the police. Private road. They have no jurisdiction. I'd like the town, to consider short-term rental agreements. And I think the idea of having $100 for each renter that comes in to the town, I mean, they're making money. Why shouldn't the town make some money on it? Just my thought, but I really would be interested. Yes.
May I? Sure. Thank you, by the way, Peg. So since I know Gary and Bob have been working on this kind of regularly, or they talk about it quite regularly, they'll also call me in shortly and say, hey, which ordinance is best? Which one is best that you've seen? Is it Tiverton's or Newport's or?
I'm recommending that we look at what's best for Little Compton.
Okay.
That's my concern. What's best for the residents who live day to day having to deal with this nonsense?
All right.
I respect people want to come here because it is God's country, but at the same token, there's no relief from people just pulling into your driveway. I mean, we have cameras, and now we really make sure our cameras are working. I mean, we've already gotten robbed several years ago in the summer. I mean, it's just, I think we need to calm some of this down. And in all honesty, I will be more than glad, no, it's okay. I'm more than glad to even you've got this, it's in the town record. But this is the Plymouth Land Grant. This is what I bought under, and now all of a sudden, we have all these bed and baths, bed and breakfasts, short-term rentals.
So if I could just, Peg, I want to thank you. This is long overdue. I don't know why it hasn't been looked at publicly before. Obviously, all the towns in our area are doing something for short-term rentals. Where I come down is, maybe, what the planning board recommends an ordinance to the council, and then we'll have a public hearing like other towns have to do.
Absolutely.
But personally, I think what's the most outrageous is people or companies coming in and buying houses here and making it an Airbnb. That needs to stop. So, I would be in favor of, if you're going to have a rental here, you've got to live here for 180 days at least, and rent your house. And you have to be accountable for it. You have to be in town or in the state or their designee in the state. So that's where I worry about, people talk about rural character. It's certainly not doing anything for rural character in this town, is letting, this go on unabated, the way it's been going on for years. So I thank you for that. We do need to have regulations. We're not reinventing the wheel here. Newport's doing it, Tiverton's doing it. you know.
Middletown?
Middletown's doing it.
Yep.
So we're late to the game. It's not going to change, and we need to get on our horse and take care of it. So I'll leave the other, you know, if you want to have fees and they need to apply, and that's, you know, when that comes down the pike, fine. But something needs to be done about people buying houses for $300,000 more than what they're asking for and not living in them and making them an Airbnb, or, you know, going down to the water and putting up a tent and having a, you know, a wedding. Now we got events going on. It's only going to get worse. So I agree. I'm more than happy to champion this.
Thank you, Patrick, I appreciate that.
Yeah, Ms. Bagara, thank you so much for writing your letter and putting it on our agenda. I've heard from a number of residents the last couple of years. I think it's gotten particularly bad since the beginning of COVID, but they've all been coming to me about short-term rentals. You know, I think it seems to me that short-term rentals not only represent an opportunity for members of our community, but they also represent a big challenge, I think, for the entire community. Concerns I've heard from people involve issues with compliance to the zoning ordinance, safety concerns, nuisance complaints, environmental and conservation concerns, particularly about water usage, and year-round housing concerns. So I was trying to figure out, you know, short-term rental is not a term that we currently have in our ordinances. So I was looking in there to see where, you know, this might fit in. And I think that currently the definition of hotels, motels, or inns would be the most relevant definition. And hotel, motel, or inn shall mean a building or portion thereof where temporary lodging is supplied. And in our current ordinance, hotels, motels, and inns are not allowed in the residential zone. So it would seem to me that under our current ordinance, short-term rentals are not allowed in the residential zone. Now, I'm not saying that we go cracking down on people right away, because it's not defined in our ordinances yet. But my point is, I think that we need to bring our ordinance up with the times, put a little bit of regulation in there so we know what a short-term rental is, what the definition is, what people are allowed or not allowed to do with them. We all received a bunch of information this afternoon from Denise Cosgrove with a bunch of different ordinances from other communities. And she also included some information from a company called AirDNA, which looks at the websites Airbnb and VRBO and takes the information from those websites and calculates how many different listings there are in the community, how many have been rented out, and how much money there is going through the town through Airbnb and VRBO. And from this information, it seems that the short-term rental market in Little Compton has become nearly a $5 million industry, and that's just Airbnb and VRBO. So I think it's time for us to do something. You know, Patrick brought up a couple of suggestions. I think that a residency requirement is something we could look at for being able to rent out a short-term rental. I don't want to go after people that are an owner-occupant of a short-term rental. Say if they have a room or a portion of their property that they currently live on and they're renting out that. I don't want to go after people like that. But I think that folks that are renting out entire homes and don't necessarily live in the community, I think that they should know the rules. I think that we should be regulating those types of short-term rentals and, you know, keeping the character that we know of Little Compton as it is.
If I may, sir? I understand the frustration you have and that we have no regulations to really regulate it, and I agree in principle what's going on. But what I find, because I know of one anyway, I'm sure there's more of people who own their home, they come up here for the summer, and then they Airbnb it all winter to supplement their retirement income. Are we gonna stop those, or are we gonna try and make the ordinance so it doesn't affect what they do?
You're saying somebody lives in the community for 6 months and then goes to Florida? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, even if it's not 6 months, what if they're just here for June, July, and August, and then they head back? So they're here for 3 months in the summer when it's busy and it's warm, and then maybe 4 months, maybe they go through September, and then they leave. And then there's companies that Airbnb and the other one that will run it for you, will take care of it for you, and they use it to supplement their income. I just don't want to.
In all honesty, what do you mean when they take care of it for you? They take care of renting it, but they don't take care of the property, they don't take care of...
It's a company. I'm not denying the problem
Okay.
that's here. I'm just saying, I don't want to unintentionally hurt people that are actually residents who have a home here, but they're not necessarily in their home, and then supplement their income this way.
Truthfully, I don't have a problem if somebody is not coming in every weekend either. But if every week there's a new group coming in,
Well, that's what Airbnb does.
that to me is a short-term rental. If you're coming in from October through May, that's great. I mean, I'm not worried, I'm more worried about the short-term rentals.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a couple of quick points. Tom Grimes, I live on Francis Lane, dead-end street, mostly retired people now, some of which are not in the best of health, very quiet for 10, 11 months of the year. However, the last couple of years, we have one house in particular, I won't get the address or anything, but it's up above us, they have a huge deck, and virtually every weekend this summer, Mike's a neighbor, he'll attest to this, they were renting it to bachelor parties, bachelorette parties, graduation parties, and 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they start pounding them down. You can hear the conversation, ramps up, you can hear obscenities, screaming, laughing. This is a quiet neighborhood. As I say, there are people down there that are, on heart monitors and that sort of thing, and they're having to put up with this. I mean, they bought these homes down there for quality of life. Is it fair to these people that this owner of this property, who doesn't live in it, is not a year-round resident, is making money every single weekend and totally disrupting the neighborhood? Is that fair? And the response that we have gotten when we reached out to the owner is they don't call the police. Well, the police say, well, unless, after 10 o'clock, there's a noise over. Before that, there's no noise over. Oh, you can't sit outside in a family gathering and listen to this obscenity, to this, right, Mike? Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's gotten totally out of control. And I have neighbors that are, they go inside, they close their windows, they can't sit down.
Thank you. I hope it's apparent that this is a matter that we are involved in an effort to bring an ordinance before the council that will allow us to decide how we want to proceed. It is common in our experience to not be the first out of the gate, and I would acknowledge that we're not the first out of the gate. We are working this issue, and I believe that I can tell you that I feel as strongly as you do about what you're saying. I have no issue with the fact that this is not Little Compton's history, and therefore it needs to be regulated. The issue will come down to how we do what we do so as to not injure those who count on this place to be a place that they can own a home and their families and friends can come to. And I acknowledge that, but that's not what you're talking about. I'm not suggesting that you're making a mistake and just creating a mountain out of a molehill. This is the kind of thing whose unintended consequences are very important. So we do need to learn from the other towns, and we are doing that.
Thank you.
Bob and I have been kicking this around for a couple of months because we knew it was gonna, it happens every year. It happens to me at Secana Point. It's constant down there. So a couple of things that we would discuss, and is first of all, we have to define what an STR is, short-term rental. Whether it's a nightly, whether it's weekly. I don't think you have a problem with a monthly one, but that's up for discussion. I think they need off-street parking. If there's gonna be a Airbnb, you can't have 10 cars parked along the road. It's gotta be off-street parking. I think we need to put something in an ordinance that they either have to own the house and be a Little Compton resident, or somebody, I mean, I think that's a basic thing. They have to be a Little Compton resident, or we need to know who to get a hold of if there is a problem. And there has to be penalties if this is a recurring problem. If they're having parties every night, that's not good for Little Compton.
May I make one interjection, Gary?
Well, let me just finish, okay? Thank you. So what I'm hoping, if Carol would concur with this, if the other councilors, and I mean, I'm not looking for 5-page things, I'm looking for bullets, what your thoughts are, Tom, to address these situations, what other people's thoughts are to address them, because Bob and I have been working on this already. He and I made the entertainment license up, which I think came out pretty good. And I think you're gonna send this to planning board, don't expect to get this back before January, because it's not gonna happen. Bob and I can try to come up with something within a month, bring it with everybody's input, put something together as a rough draft, bring it to the council for the council's digestion, get their input on it, take it back, rewrite it until we come down with an ordinance that's fair and just for everybody, and that everybody's gonna be comfortable with, that's gonna protect the rights of the citizens of Little Compton. So.
If I could.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the simpler ways would be to say that they have to have off-street parking.
I did say that, off-street parking.
But we also have an ordinance in town about not parking on grass, that you must have it on a paved surface. Because I know other renters have had problems in the past because they were parking on grass and not on a parking specified area. Just a thought, one last thought, and I'm done. Maybe we need to look at maybe increasing short-term rentals must be at least 45 days. I mean, that's one thing. Thank you for hearing me. I would, as a former school committee person in Little Compton, we had a form if parents wanted to contact the school committee or the superintendent that they filled out. And then we got a response back that it was going to be put on agenda. Maybe the town would like to look at doing something like that as well, because I know I did send one to Mr. Texera in March, and it didn't get through, and then it did get through, and I understand you have forms that you have to fill out, but, you know, maybe there'd be an easier way for community members to fill out a form if it was on your website. Just a thought. Thank you very much. I appreciate your concerns.
Bob, I think there's a question in the audience.
Yeah, yes.
I have a PBR on either side of it. And, you know, I know that Airbnb and the RPO, they have a great business plan. It works well for them. It doesn't necessarily work for the residents of this town. You know, I think what we need to do is basically put a minimum on the length of stay. And traditionally, in Little Compton, people would come for the month of July, and another family might rent the same house for the month of August, or maybe one family would rent it for the whole summer. I mean, that's the way it was ever since I was a kid, and I'm sure generations before me. I live about 50 feet away from one of the houses. There's a line of trees between, my house and their house, and they can't, if you're on their deck, they can't even tell that there's a house on the other side. But, we can hear every word they're saying. It's a pain in the neck. It's been a pain in the neck for a while. The people that own the house, I'm actually friends with, and I've told them, many times, and we've tried putting up signs in the house, that their neighbors be respectful, but most of the time it doesn't work. The point I want to try to bring up too is there's another detriment to this, and it is people are coming into this town and they're buying up houses that our kids can't afford to buy, because they're basically buying houses and they're getting them for free. So they're buying these houses for above asking price, and they don't care, because they'll just charge $350 a night instead of $300 a night. They don't care what it costs. Our kids can't afford to buy a home in town, and and I think that's a shame. I think that a lot of these properties, they're these properties, these fixer-uppers that these people are buying. 99% of them are fixer-uppers that kids like my son could buy and fix up and live there and have a family and send their kids to school. They're not getting a chance because these houses are being bought up, before they're even on the market in some cases. So excuse me, but I think that we need to look at that aspect as well. It's a real detriment, because once these houses are gone, they're gone. And these people are not contributing anything to the town other than taxes. They're not sending kids to school. They're not, they're not participating in the community. It's nothing. They don't even live in the same state. So I think it's a shame. I think it's it's changing adversely the character of this town, adversely, excuse me. And I really think we need to take a good hard look at this, because it's probably one of the things that's going to harm our town more than anything else that I've seen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. But, yeah, Mike, if I could just say, it's all connected, just like you say. It's all connected, and, once the school goes, I don't know what you're gonna have here. The churches will be next, and then it'll be the general store. So I've been preaching it for a long time, in my days of the school committee, and declining enrollment, and why that's happening. And with COVID and this Airbnb, it's at our doorstep, and it's gonna swallow us. It's in our house.
And that always concerns me, because are they licensed? Are they vetted? Because they come onto properties where I've had to clean up some of their duties, and that just becomes one more issue. It's a little issue, but it's still one more issue. Because if they mix with our dogs and they get hurt, I don't want to be responsible. We have a leash law.
Yes.
I'll take the dogs. That's okay. I just want to say one thing you said about correspondence. I think since I've been on the council for over 13 months now, these folks have been really good. Anything that comes in as correspondence goes right in the packet. So I don't know what happened to your first letter. I'm sure it was just a miscommunication, or it got lost or whatever, but Carol and the town administrator, anything that comes in comes in the packet and gets on the agenda if someone takes it out of consent, obviously. Yeah.
No, I was just thinking that I wasn't criticizing anybody, and you're right, things go by the way it goes when I'm in the I was just thinking it would be easier if community members, when you go to the school committee, you can go right on their website and fill it up, as you well know. I was just making that suggestion as one more accessory for people getting to the town.
What I've mentioned before is Barbara Passmore hand writes hers, and I think it's great. So they seem to find it here.
So I'll make a motion to assign the council president and Mr. Mataronis to craft a ordinance defining and regulating short-term rentals and return to the council in 6 weeks. Is that enough time?
I think that's plenty.
I'm
of
happy
time.
to second
If
that
we-
motion.
If we get early, if we get done earlier, I mean, most of this is done for the summer. It's in the summer. You're not gonna get B&B rentals. Everybody, and most people have Airbnb rentals in the summer or weekly, or I'm not sure how they are anyways.
I don't wanna
But
get into,
they-
I don't wanna get into a quorum issue, but I'd like to be part of that too. That'd be a quorum issue, so,
Well, what I said is you guys can put your comments to Carol.
all right.
Bob and I will digest them, come back, and then at that time, at that meeting, when we're in open forum, you can say, well, you guys did a good job, or you did a lousy job, I want this, I think this should be in there, and then we'll take that, we'll rewrite it again, just like the entertainment license took us probably 3 or 4 months, or 6 months, probably, and then we had to tweak that for probably about a year, because there was little holes, people were circumventing, okay, we gotta close that hole, and this is gonna be the same way, okay? Somebody's gonna be a lawyer that owns one of these houses and say, oh, I know how to circumvent that. Okay, you can circumvent it one time, but you're not gonna keep circumventing it, okay? Because we have control of the town, and we need to take care of the town.
Depending on the degree of your interest in being part of it, I am happy to be the reviewer of the product, if that's how you would want to amend the motion. If you want these two counselors to draft it and for me to wordsmith it, I'm fine with that as well.
It's easier
So
for,
leave it the way you,
it's easy for me to come into town hall and meet with you. You and I sit down. Paul is kind of busy most of the time, so.
No, and that's fine.
I mean,
just-
I can come
very
in.
good. Let the motion stand.
Yeah,
as
because
it's
I'd
made.
like input too, but we'll get it at the
Right.
meeting, so.
So the motion is that myself and the vice president will bring forward in 6 weeks, in 3 meetings from now, a proposal. Is that it?
Yep, and then it's been made and seconded, right? So,
Yes.
and when you come back in 6 weeks, we'll have that lively debate.
Hopefully it won't be too
Well,
lively.
It'll be an ordinance recommendation.
Right.
Not at that time it won't. It'd be a draft.
Well,
Draft ordinance
yeah.
recommendation. What else could it be?
Well, I'm not sure.
if it is an amendment to the zoning ordinance, it requires the planning board's input.
Yeah.
And we will work that as well in the background,
Mm.
so that the planning board gets up to speed as we get up to speed. Any further discussion? Thank you for bringing the issue forward. Let me assure you, as you can tell, you are not the only one. All 5 of us have heard this argument with variations, and that's what makes it so challenging. It's not like crop cannons. There isn't just one set of propane that blows out through a gun that you can say, stop putting that next to somebody's property. This one is tougher. Doesn't mean we can't do it, but it means we gotta think harder to make sure that we cover it all. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next sitting is Board of License Commissioners. We're asked for a request for a 1-day beverage license for a clam bake.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Communications, a letter from Connor Geary and Catherine Hamill addressed to both the Town Council and the Beach Commission, wondering if a local resident can be recognized for his tireless work to keep the beach at Sea Spray Way beautiful. I know, what's that?
The Beach Commission took this up as well.
Okay, thank you. The Beach Commission has taken this matter up as well. I know the individual and have for many years, and I would certainly agree with that. I'm happy to work with the Beach Commission to provide an appropriate certificate or appropriate, what's the term I'm looking for? Citation, so that he can be recognized. Part of their proposal also suggested that if there were some way he could be compensated, that would be helpful. I will work with the Beach Commission on that as well. I'm not certain that that's possible, but let me see.
So I'm gonna make a motion to allow the town council president to work on this, letter from this individual with the beach commission and come back to the town council with a citation. And whatever other information he has, what the beach commission wants to do.
I'll second the motion for my cousin Tony.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just, having looked at this for about 3 minutes of my life, it sounds like, maybe we could get this gentleman some equipment, litter equipment, some clothing, something neat like that. I'm more than happy to make a motion for that later down the road.
Okay.
I don't think you want to put him on staff and pay a pension, do you, Mr. Mushin? You don't want to put him on staff and pay a pension for him, right?
No.
Not as a full-time employee.
Okay.
But there are examples. Our lifeguards are not under our pension program. So there are employees that we have that are seasonal in nature. And he doesn't do too much of it on the ice that I know of. But, no. That then is the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next, a copy of a resolution adopted by the town of Coventry designating September 24th as Coventry Community Wellness Day. Is there a motion to place
Motion to
this
place
on?
on.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to place on file. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent calendar.
Motion to place consent calendar on file.
Second?
Discussion on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And the payment of bills.
Motion to pay the bills.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Having no further matters before us, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.